You're lying in bed at 1 a.m., scrolling through Zillow again. There's a house listed for $489,000. Three bedrooms, two bathrooms, builder grade everything. The kitchen counters look like they haven't been updated since 2005. The backyard is barely big enough for a grill, and you're sitting there doing mental math, wondering if somehow you missed a promotion at work, or if the entire world just agreed to pretend these prices make sense. Here's the thing, it's not you, it's the math. And the math is absolutely brutal. Today, we're going to do something most people in real estate don't want you to do. We're going to calculate who can actually, genuinely, comfortably afford a $500,000 house in 2026. Not who the bank will approve, not who can technically squeeze into the monthly payment, but who can buy this house and still sleep at night. Because there's a massive difference between qualifying for a mortgage and being able to afford your life after you sign the papers. Let me start with the uncomfortable part. In dozens of markets across the country right now, $500,000 isn't buying you a dream home. It's buying you normal. A 1,200 square foot box in a subdivision. Three bedrooms that feel smaller than they look in photos. A yard the size of a large bath mat. In cities like Denver, Austin, Seattle, or anywhere within an hour of a major metro, this is just what houses cost now. This is what regular people are somehow expected to afford. The median household income in the United States is about $84,000 a year. So we're asking people making $84,000 to buy homes that cost 6 times their annual salary. If that sounds insane to you, good. You're paying attention. But everyone keeps telling you it's doable. The mortgage broker says you're approved. Your parents bought a house on way less income. Some person on social media is flipping properties with no money down. So what's the problem? The problem is that everyone is lying to you about what affordable actually means. Let's start with the down payment because this is where most dreams quietly die. The traditional rule is 20% down. On a $500,000 house, that's $100,000 in cash. Just sitting there, ready to hand over. The median savings account in America has about $8,000 in it. You're not a little short, you're $92,000 short. And before you say you'll just save it, let me show you that math too. If you're making $84,000 a year and somehow manage to save 10% of your gross income, which almost nobody actually does, you're saving $8,400 per year. At that rate, it'll take you 12 years to save $100,000. 12 years. And that's assuming housing prices stay exactly where they are, which they absolutely will not. So you skip the 20% down. You do what most people actually do and put down 5% or 10% instead. Congratulations. You just unlocked a new monthly expense called PMI, private mortgage insurance. This is the fee you pay every month for the crime of not being wealthy enough to put 20% down. It runs anywhere from $200 to $400 a month depending on your loan. You're paying extra money to protect the bank, not yourself, because they're worried you might default. You're starting from a position of financial punishment. Now let's talk about the actual mortgage payment. You scrape together $50,000 for a 10% down payment. That leaves you with a $450,000 loan. At current interest rates, somewhere in the 6% to 7% range depending on your credit, your monthly payment lands around $2,650 to $2,850. That's just principal and interest. That number doesn't include a single other thing you actually need to live in the house. Let's add property taxes. Depending on where you live, you're looking at $4,000 to $8,000 per year, which works out to about $500 a month if we're being conservative. Then there's homeowners insurance, which has absolutely skyrocketed in the past few years. Climate-related disasters have made everything more expensive to insure. You're looking at another $250 to $350 per month. And that's if your house isn't in a flood zone or fire zone. Then there's maintenance, the thing everyone forgets about until the water heater dies on a Sunday night. The general rule is to budget 1% of your home's value per year for repairs and upkeep. On a $500,000 house, that's $5,000 annually, or about $417 per month. And don't forget that PMI we talked about. Add another $300. So let's total this up. Mortgage payment, $2,850. Property taxes, $500. Insurance, $300. Maintenance, $417. PMI, $300. Your total monthly housing cost is now sitting at roughly $4,360. And that's assuming nothing breaks, you don't need a new roof, and your HOA doesn't randomly decide to repave the neighborhood and send you a surprise $3,000 bill. Here's where it gets really interesting. Financial advisors will tell you that you shouldn't spend more than 28% of your gross monthly income on housing. Banks will approve you if your total debt to income ratio is under 43%. Let's reverse engineer this. If you're spending $4,267 per month on housing, and that represents 28% of your income, you need to be making roughly $187,000 per year. If we use the more lenient 43% rule, you still need to be pulling in around $150,000 annually. And here's the punchline. Only about 10% to 20% of US households make $150,000 or more, which means 80% of American households cannot comfortably afford a $500,000 house under any reasonable financial standard. This isn't opinion. This is just math being cruel, but people are still buying these houses. So who are they? Some have dual incomes in high-paying fields. Some have family money, and some are stretching themselves so thin that one medical bill or job loss would collapse their entire financial life. Let me show you what this actually looks like. Meet a household we'll call the Johnsons. Two working professionals pulling in a combined $160,000 a year. That puts them well above the median, solidly upper middle class. They should be comfortable, right? Let's watch what happens when they buy that $500,000 house. First, their gross income of $160,000 sounds impressive until taxes show up. After federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, and maybe a modest retirement contribution, they're taking home around $9,500 per month. That's their actual money to live on. Now subtract that 43 and 67er monthly housing cost. They're left with $5,133 for literally everything else in their lives. 2 car payments because they both need to commute. There goes $800. Car insurance for 2 vehicles, another $250. Gas because nothing is walkable, $300. Student loans because they needed those degrees to qualify for the mortgage, $600. Health insurance, premiums their employers don't fully cover, $400. Groceries for a family trying to eat reasonably healthy, $800. Utilities for that bigger house, electricity, water, internet, phones, $450. We're now at $1,533 remaining, and we haven't touched clothing, kids' activities, car repairs, medical copays, or the basic human need to occasionally leave the house and pretend you have a life, or savings, emergency fund, retirement beyond that modest contribution. Good luck. This household is spending 46% of their take-home pay on housing, not 28%, not even 35%, nearly half. And these aren't irresponsible people. They're not buying jet skis or taking European vacations. They're just trying to live in a house that the market tells them is normal. Here's what that actually feels like day to day. It feels like checking your bank account before buying groceries. It feels like saying no to your kid's field trip because that $35 might be needed if the check engine light comes on. It feels like lying awake at 2 a.m. doing mental math about whether you can afford new tires this month or if you need to push it to next and just pray it doesn't rain. It feels like being one unexpected expense away from disaster at all times. The HVAC breaks. That's $5,000 you don't have. Someone rear-ends you and your deductible is $1,000. You're putting it on a credit card. Your kid needs braces. You're financing dental work like it's a car. This is the reality for households earning $160,000 trying to own a $500,000 home. Now, imagine what it looks like for households making $120,000 or $100,000 or the actual median income of $84,000. At median income, buying a $500,000 house isn't tight. It's not stretching. It's financial fantasy. It's mathematically impossible without either massive external help or accepting a level of risk that would make a professional gambler nervous. But here's what makes this truly twisted. The housing market doesn't care about these numbers. Sellers list homes at $500,000 because that's what comparable houses sold for. Banks approve buyers at 43% debt to income because technically the loan won't default immediately. Real estate agents encourage buyers to stretch because their commission depends on closing the deal. Nobody in the transaction has an incentive to tell you that you're about to financially drown yourself. The system is designed to get you into the house, not to ensure you can comfortably afford it long term. And once you're in, once you've signed those papers and moved your furniture, you're trapped. You can't just decide 6 months later that this was a mistake and walk away without destroying your credit and losing your down payment. So people stay. They stay in homes they can't afford, working jobs they hate because they can't risk any income disruption, slowly watching their savings evaporate, wondering why they feel so stressed when they're supposedly living the American dream. Let me tell you the harsh truth. For probably 70% to 80% of American households, a $500,000 home is not affordable, not sustainably, not without accepting a level of financial precariousness that would have been considered reckless a generation ago. This isn't about personal failure. This isn't about not working hard enough or not being financially savvy. This is about a housing market that has completely disconnected from income reality. Home prices have increased roughly 400% since 1990. Median household income has gone up about 180% in the same period. The math doesn't work. It cannot work. It will not work. And yet we keep pretending it does. We keep telling people that home ownership is essential for building wealth, which technically is true, but ignores the part where you have to survive the mortgage first. We keep perpetuating the myth that if you just budget better, skip the coffee, work a side hustle, you can make it happen. But you can't budget your way out of a structural affordability crisis. You can't side hustle your way into a down payment when rent is eating 40% of your income. You can't manifest a lower interest rate through positive thinking. What you can do is understand the actual numbers so you can make an informed decision. Maybe that decision is to keep renting and invest the difference. Maybe it's to look at a $350,000 house instead, even if it means a longer commute. Maybe it's to acknowledge that home ownership in your current market simply isn't viable right now. And that's okay, because here's what nobody tells you. There is no prize for buying a house you can't afford. There is no trophy for being house poor. The stress of barely making your mortgage payment every month will erase any pride you felt the day you got the keys. The real question isn't whether you can technically get approved for a $500,000 house. The real question is whether owning that house will actually improve your life, or just transfer your money to a bank while you stress about property taxes. And for most people, when you run the honest numbers, the answer becomes uncomfortably clear. So if you're sitting there right now, feeling priced out, feeling like home ownership is slipping away, feeling like you're failing at some fundamental adult milestone, I need you to understand something. You're not failing. The system is failing you. Home prices have outpaced wage growth so dramatically that what was normal and achievable for previous generations is now a luxury item for most people. A $500,000 house is not a starter home. It's not affordable on a median income. It's not something you should stretch for unless you genuinely have the income to support it without financial acrobatics. Run your real numbers. Factor in all the costs. Be honest about your income stability. And if the math doesn't work, walk away. There is no shame in saying this doesn't make sense for me right now. There is no trophy for buying a house that makes you miserable. The real win is making decisions based on reality rather than social pressure, on math rather than emotion, on your actual financial situation rather than what you wish it could be. That's how you avoid becoming another cautionary tale. Look, I'm not telling you to give up on home ownership forever. I'm telling you to give up on the delusion that a $500,000 house is somehow within reach just because a bank will let you sign the papers. Those are two catastrophically different things. Maybe in 5 years, your income doubles. Maybe the market corrects. Maybe you relocate to somewhere $500,000 actually buys you something reasonable. But right now, today, with current prices and current incomes, this math is broken for most people. And pretending otherwise doesn't make you optimistic. It makes you a future statistic. So here's my actual advice. Stop looking at what you qualify for and start looking at what you can genuinely afford, without turning your life into a financial tightrope act. Find the number where you can pay the mortgage, handle maintenance, save for emergencies, invest for retirement, and still occasionally remember what it feels like to not be stressed about money. For most people, that number is nowhere near $500,000, and that's completely fine. You're not less successful because you're being realistic. You're not failing at adulthood because you refuse to financially drown yourself for granite countertops. You're just doing math that apparently nobody else wants to do. The housing market will keep pretending these prices make sense. Banks will keep approving loans that shouldn't exist. Real estate agents will keep telling you it's a great time to buy. But you don't have to participate in collective financial insanity just because everyone else is. Sometimes the smartest move is recognizing when the game's rigged and choosing not to play.